The sulfur-tinged air of molten fong burned Blake's lungs as he took his first steps onto the academy grounds. The red sky cast a crimson glow across the cracked, obsidian surface beneath his feet, making the entire landscape appear as if it were bleeding. In the distance, a geyser of magma erupted, sending molten rock hundreds of feet into the air before it crashed back down in a spectacular display of primal power. Blake adjusted the collar of his environment suit, ensuring the filter was properly sealed. As a human, he lacked the natural adaptations that made the beast folk so comfortable in this hellish environment. Still, discomfort was a small price to pay for the opportunity to train at Red Fong Academy, the most prestigious and brutal combat institution in the solar system. Another human weakling, a gruff voice sneered. "You'll be gone within a week." Blake turned to face a towering beast folk warrior, his feline features contorted in a dismissive scowl. Two more academy students flanked him, their muscular bodies adorned with ceremonial scars and tribal markings. "I'll still be here when you graduate," Blake replied, meeting the warrior's yellow eyes without flinching. "Or wash out, whichever comes first." The beast folk's nostrils flared, but before he could respond, a sharp whistle cut through the air. The gathering crowd parted as Master Krell, a battle-scarred instructor known throughout the system for his ruthlessness, approached. "Enough posturing," Krell growled, his canine teeth gleaming in the red light. "You're all here to fight, not talk." "Human," he said, jabbing a clawed finger at Blake. "You're with Regina for your first sparring match." Blake followed Krell's gesture toward a figure standing alone at the edge of the training grounds. Regina, as she was apparently called, was a female beast folk with striking red-orange fur that seemed to catch fire in the crimson light. Her body was a tapestry of scars, each one telling the story of a battle survived. Unlike the other beast folk who openly displayed their contempt, Regina's expression remained unreadable as she assessed him with amber eyes. "Begin in 5 minutes," Krell barked before stalking away. Blake approached the combat ring, aware of the eyes tracking his every move. Most humans avoided molten fong, the harsh environment, the predominantly beast folk population, and the Academy's brutal reputation kept his kind away. But that was precisely why he had come. After years as a mercenary on Earth's orbital stations, Blake was determined to prove that humans could match any species in combat prowess. Regina entered the ring without a word, her movements fluid and predatory. Up close, Blake could see the intricate patterns of her fur, the way it shifted from deep crimson near her spine to burnished gold at her extremities. He also noticed the fresh wounds barely healed on her forearms, evidence of recent combat. "I'm Blake," he offered, falling into a defensive stance. She didn't respond. Instead, her muscles tensed, and Blake barely had time to react before she launched her first attack. Her claws slashed through the air where his head had been a split second earlier. For the next several minutes, Blake found himself entirely on the defensive. Regina was fast, faster than any opponent he'd faced before. Her attacks came from unpredictable angles, forcing him to rely on instinct rather than technique. The jeers and taunts from the watching crowd faded to white noise as he focused entirely on staying alive. As the match continued, Blake began to recognize patterns in Regina's movements. Despite her ferocity, there was a rhythm to her attacks, a predictability that came from years of formalized training. Blake, with his unorthodox mercenary background, saw an opening. When Regina lunged forward with a powerful strike, Blake sidestepped, grabbed her extended arm, and executed a perfect judo throw. The technique, rarely seen in beast folk combat, caught Regina completely off guard. She hit the ground hard, the impact forcing the air from her lungs. The crowd fell silent. Blake moved to continue the match, but stopped when he noticed Regina's strange reaction. Rather than springing back to her feet in rage or embarrassment, she remained on her back, staring up at him with an expression of stunned respect. A low, rumbling sound emerged from her throat. A purr. Slowly, Regina rose to her feet. Without breaking eye contact, she removed a pair of worn, battle-scarred gauntlets from her hands and extended them toward Blake. "What's happening?" Blake asked, uncertain. She's chosen you, came Krell's voice from the edge of the ring. The instructor's expression was a mixture of shock and amusement. As a courtship partner, Blake's confusion must have been evident because Krell elaborated. In beastfolk culture, when a warrior offers their gauntlets, it signals a desire for partnership, both in combat and in life. It's a rare honor. The crowd's reaction was immediate and divided. Some beastfolk hissed in disapproval, others watched with fascination, and a few openly laughed at what they perceived as Regina's poor judgment. I don't understand, Blake said, looking back at Regina. We just met. We fought for a few minutes. Strength recognizes strength, Regina said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was deep and melodious, with a slight growl underlining her words. You bested me fairly. No human has done that before. No beastfolk has done that in years. Blake hesitated, aware that his next action would have significant cultural implications. To refuse would insult not only Regina, but the entire academy. Yet accepting meant committing to a partnership he didn't fully understand. What exactly am I agreeing to? He asked. To fight together, Regina said simply. To face trials together. To stand back to back against enemies. Nothing more unless both desire it. The gauntlets remained extended, a silent question hanging in the air between them. With a deep breath, Blake reached out and took them. The leather was worn smooth from years of use, still warm from Regina's hands. The crowd's murmuring intensified. Regina's amber eyes gleamed with satisfaction. You are strong, she said. I choose you. As Blake stood there, holding the gauntlets and surrounded by staring beastfolk, he couldn't help but feel that his time at Red Fang Academy had just become significantly more complicated than he had anticipated. The heat from the Ember Spike trial radiated through the stone corridors as Blake adjusted his protective gear. 2 weeks had passed since the sparring match with Regina, and the Academy wasted no time testing their newly formed partnership. The Ember Spike Gauntlet is designed to cull the weak, Master Krell announced to the assembled pairs. You will enter the volcanic caverns beneath the Academy, navigate the lava flows, and retrieve a fire crystal from the inner chamber. The last pair to return, if they return at all, will face severe consequences. Blake glanced at Regina, who stood beside him with characteristic stoicism. Over the past 2 weeks, they had developed a tentative routine. Training together at dawn, meals taken in silence, and occasional exchanges about combat techniques. She remained an enigma, fierce in training but reserved in all other interactions. Don't slow me down, human, Regina said, though her tone lacked the contempt that usually accompanied such words from other beastfolk. Wouldn't dream of it, Blake replied. As they entered the caverns, the temperature rose dramatically. Blake's environment suit offered some protection, but sweat still poured down his face. Regina, with her natural adaptations to Molta and Fang's extreme conditions, moved with ease. The path narrowed, forcing them to proceed single file along a ridge overlooking a bubbling river of lava. Blake noticed Regina occasionally glancing back, checking on him, a courtesy none of the other beastfolk pairs extended to their partners. Why did you really choose me? Blake asked as they paused at a junction. There must be dozens of stronger warriors at the Academy. Regina's ears flicked, a gesture Blake had come to recognize as contemplation. Most fight with rage, she finally said. You fight with thought, your technique with the throw. She mimicked the judo movement. Not strength alone, intelligence, adaptability. Before Blake could respond, a roar echoed through the cavern, followed by the sound of falling rocks. Gorvok, Regina growled, her fur bristling. He and his new partner are trying to collapse the passage behind them. They hurried forward, navigating increasingly treacherous terrain. Twice, Blake slipped on the smooth obsidian floor, and twice, Regina's quick reflexes saved him from plunging into the lava below. After an hour of careful progress, they reached a vast chamber filled with glowing crystals. In the center, sitting on a natural pedestal, was a larger crystal pulsing with inner fire. There, Regina pointed. The fire crystal. They weren't alone. 3 other pairs had already reached the chamber, including Gorvok, a massive, gray-furred beast folk with a perpetual snarl, and his partner, a sinewy female with spotted fur. "Look who finally arrived," Gorvok sneered, his voice carrying across the chamber. "The warrior who prefers human trash to her own kind." Regina's claws extended reflexively, but Blake placed a restraining hand on her arm. "He's trying to provoke us. Let's just get the crystal and go." The pairs circled the pedestal cautiously. According to Academy tradition, direct fighting was prohibited during collection trials, but accidents were common. As they approached the pedestal, Gorvok deliberately shouldered past Blake, sending him stumbling toward a steam vent. Regina moved with blinding speed, pulling Blake back just as the vent erupted with scalding vapor. "That was no accident," Blake muttered. "Of course not," Regina replied. "Gorvok wanted me as his partner last season. I refused." Understanding dawned on Blake. Gorvok's hostility wasn't just species prejudice, it was jealousy. While the other pairs jockeyed for position, Blake studied the chamber, noting the pattern of the steam vents and the crystal's placement. "I have an idea," he whispered to Regina, "but it requires trust." Regina nodded without hesitation, surprising Blake with her immediate confidence. Blake approached the pedestal from a different angle, deliberately stepping on a pressure plate that triggered a series of steam eruptions. As the other pairs scattered for cover, Regina launched herself over the steam, snatched the crystal, and landed gracefully on the other side. "Run!" Blake shouted, already sprinting toward the exit. They fled through the tunnels, Gorvok's enraged roars echoing behind them. The journey back was a blur of narrow escapes and tight squeezes, but they emerged from the caverns significantly ahead of the other pairs. Master Krell's surprised expression quickly masked itself behind his customary scowl. "Impressive," he admitted grudgingly, "especially for a human." As they handed over the crystal, Blake caught Regina's eye. For the first time, he saw a hint of a smile play at the corners of her mouth. That night, as Blake lay on his cot in the academy barracks, Regina appeared at his door. "Training." "Dawn," she said simply. "I'll be there," Blake replied, expecting her to leave. Instead, she lingered, her amber eyes reflective in the dim light. "The throw you used that first day," she said. "Teach me." Blake sat up, surprised. "You want to learn human fighting techniques?" "I want to learn effective techniques," she corrected. "Your world produced you. It must have value." The following weeks established a routine. Before sunrise, they trained together, Blake teaching Regina earth martial arts, while she instructed him in the brutal close combat styles of the beast folk. During the day, they endured the Academy's harsh regimen, facing increasingly difficult challenges. Their success drew attention, not all of it welcome. Gorvok's antagonism grew, manifesting in accidents during training and thinly veiled threats in the mess hall. "He's becoming dangerous," Blake observed one evening as they nursed bruises from a particularly brutal training session. Regina's eyes narrowed. "He fears what we're becoming." "And what's that?" Blake asked. "Stronger together than apart," she said simply. During a rare moment of downtime, Regina showed Blake the significance of the gauntlets he now wore daily. Each scratch and mark represented a battle survived or a technique mastered. "These belong to my sire," she explained, touching one of the deeper gouges. "And his sire before him." "Why give them to me?" Blake asked. "They're your heritage." Regina sighed, a remarkably human gesture. "My last partner," she hesitated, her ears flattening against her head. "He abandoned me during the stone fire rite. Left me to die when we were attacked. The ultimate betrayal." Blake nodded, understanding dawning. "So, I'm a test. You want to see if all partners eventually betray you." "You were," she admitted. "Now, I'm not certain what you are." The confession hung between them, creating a new dimension to their partnership. Blake realized that Regina's choice had been as much about healing old wounds as it was about recognizing his strength. The Academy's attitude toward them was shifting too. What began as derision had transformed into reluctant respect. Even Master Krell had stopped referring to Blake as the human, occasionally using his actual name. 3 months into their partnership, the Academy announced the Stonefire Rite, the most demanding trial for bonded warriors. Pairs would enter the scorched labyrinth, a natural maze of volcanic tunnels filled with deadly creatures and ancient traps, to retrieve a first claw shard. The night before the trial, Blake found Regina on the training grounds, methodically sharpening her claws. "Nervous?" he asked, sitting beside her. "Yes," she admitted, surprising him with her honesty. "Not about the labyrinth. About after. What happens after?" Regina's gaze remained fixed on her claws. "If we succeed, we become full members of the Academy. Respected. Sought after." She finally looked up, her eyes troubled. Targets. Blake understood. Success brought attention, not all of it benign. Together, a human and a beastfolk warrior breaking Academy records would upset the established order. "Whatever comes after," Blake said, "we face it together. That's the deal, right?" Regina studied him for a long moment. "Together," she echoed, the words sounding like a promise. Dawn broke blood red over molten fong as the pairs assembled at the entrance to the scorched labyrinth. Steam hissed from cracks in the ground, and the distant rumble of subterranean lava flows provided an ominous backdrop to Master Krell's final instructions. "The first claw shard lies at the heart of the labyrinth," Krell announced. "It is a relic of our ancestors, imbued with power. Those who retrieve it prove themselves worthy of the highest honors and responsibilities the Academy can bestow." His gaze lingered on Blake and Regina. "Some partnerships will be tested beyond endurance. Others will be forged into something unbreakable. The labyrinth reveals truth." As the pairs entered the maze one by one, Blake felt Regina's tension. This was where her previous partner had betrayed her, a similar trial with similar stakes. "I won't leave you," Blake said quietly. Regina's response was equally soft. "I believe you." The scorched labyrinth lived up to its name. Narrow passages wound between walls of obsidian glass, occasionally opening into chambers where pools of lava bubbled ominously. The air was thick with toxic gases, forcing Blake to rely heavily on his environment suit's filters. They encountered their first challenge an hour in, a massive salamander-like creature with skin that glowed like embers. It lunged at them from a side passage, jaws gaping to reveal rows of crystalline teeth. Regina moved without hesitation, shoving Blake aside and meeting the creature head-on. Her claws raked across its face, drawing a spray of molten blood that sizzled against the stone floor. Blake recovered quickly, circling behind the creature and driving his combat knife into a vulnerable spot at the base of its skull. The beast collapsed, its body still radiating intense heat. "Nice kill," Regina acknowledged, examining a burn on her forearm where the creature's blood had splashed. "Good teamwork," Blake corrected, applying a cooling salve to her injury. They proceeded deeper, navigating by instinct and the occasional ancient marking on the walls. Twice they heard distant sounds of combat, other pairs encountering the labyrinth's guardians. After several hours of careful progress, they reached a vast chamber unlike any they had seen before. The ceiling soared hundreds of feet above, lost in shadows. In the center, a natural bridge of stone arched over a lake of churning lava, leading to a platform where a glowing object rested on a pedestal. "The first claw shard," Regina breathed, her eyes reflecting the distant glow. They started across the bridge, cautiously, aware of the lethal heat rising from below. Halfway across, Blake's instinct screamed a warning. He pulled Regina back, just as a projectile whistled past her head, exploding against the far wall. "Ambush!" Blake shouted, scanning for the source of the attack. Gorvok and his partner emerged from a hidden alcove near the pedestal, armed with what appeared to be stolen Academy weapons. "Did you really think I'd let a human and a traitor claim the shard?" Gorvok snarled. "This isn't part of the trial, Gorvok," Regina growled back. "You're violating Academy law." "Laws are for the weak," Gorvok replied, firing another shot that forced them to take cover behind an outcropping. "When I bring back your bodies along with the shard, I'll be hailed as a hero who purged a disgrace from our ranks." Blake assessed their options quickly. The bridge provided little cover, and Gorvok had the high ground. We need to split up, he whispered to Regina. I'll draw their fire. You circle around. Regina's eyes widened with alarm. No, that's how it happened last time. We separated and... Trust me, Blake interrupted, gripping her shoulder. I'm not leaving you. I'm making an opening for you. For a tense moment, Regina seemed torn between past trauma and present trust. Finally, she nodded. Be careful. Blake burst from cover, zigzagging across the bridge as Gorvok's weapon discharged repeatedly. Each shot missed by inches, shattering stone or exploding harmlessly against the walls. Meanwhile, Regina slipped over the edge of the bridge, using her claws to cling to the underside as she made her way toward the pedestal. Gorvok, focused on Blake, didn't notice Regina's approach until it was too late. She exploded upward from the edge of the platform, tackling Gorvok's partner and sending them both sprawling. The weapon clattered away, sliding dangerously close to the lava lake. Blake seized the moment of distraction to charge forward, engaging Gorvok directly. The larger beastfolk was stronger, but Blake's training with Regina had taught him how to counter the typical beastfolk fighting style. He slipped inside Gorvok's guard, landing several precise strikes to vulnerable pressure points. The fight was brutal and fast-paced. Gorvok managed to land a powerful blow that sent Blake staggering backward, his footing precarious on the narrow bridge. For a heart-stopping moment, he teetered on the edge, the heat of the lava below singing the back of his suit. Gorvok advanced, a triumphant snarl on his face. This is the end of your journey, human. Your bones will join the ashes in the lava. As he lunged forward to deliver the final push, Regina appeared behind him, her face a mask of cold fury. She seized Gorvok by the scruff of his neck and flung him aside with stunning force. You will not take him from me, she growled, a primal sound that echoed throughout the chamber. Gorvok recovered quickly, facing Regina with bared fangs. You choose him over your own kind? You're more pathetic than I thought. I choose strength, honor, and loyalty, Regina replied. You possess none of these. Their clash was spectacular, two elite beastfolk warriors employing generations of combat techniques. Blake, having regained his balance, moved to help, but Regina shook her head. The shard, she called. Get the shard. Blake understood. The trial was still ongoing, and the shard was their primary objective. He sprinted toward the pedestal, while Regina kept Gorvok occupied. The first claw shard was smaller than he expected, a crystalline fragment that pulsed with inner light, warm to the touch. As Blake's fingers closed around it, a tremor ran through the entire chamber. Regina, Blake shouted, we need to go. Now. Regina delivered a final, devastating blow that sent Gorvok crashing to the ground, then raced to join Blake. Behind them, the bridge began to crack, sections falling away into the lava below. The labyrinth is collapsing, Regina said, pulling Blake toward a side passage. The shard's removal must have triggered something. They ran through rapidly disintegrating tunnels, the roar of collapsing stone and surging lava pursuing them like a living predator. At one point, a section of floor gave way beneath Blake's feet. He plunged downward, certain he was falling to his death, only to have Regina's hand close around his wrist in an iron grip. With extraordinary strength, she pulled him to safety, not pausing in their flight. I will not lose another partner, she declared between breaths. When they finally emerged from the labyrinth into the red light of Molten Fong's perpetual dusk, they were the first pair to return, and, as they would later learn, one of only 3 to survive the trial. Master Krell's expression as they presented the first claw shard was uncharacteristically respectful. You have done what many believed impossible, he acknowledged. A human and a beast folk working in true partnership. The Academy's response to their success was mixed. Some celebrated the breaking of old barriers. Others, particularly those with connections to traditionalist factions, muttered darkly about human corruption. Most surprising was the Academy Council's decision to formally recognize their partnership with the highest honors, a ceremony broadcast throughout Molten Fong. Standing before the assembled Academy, Regina formally placed her family's mark on Blake's gauntlets, symbolically accepting him into her lineage. From this day forward, Master Krell announced, you are no longer student warriors, but full members of Red Fang Academy, with all the privileges and duties that entails. As the ceremony concluded and the crowd dispersed, Regina leaned close to Blake. Something is wrong, she whispered. The council never embraces change this readily. Blake had noticed the same discordance. They're planning something, he agreed. That night, as they celebrated their victory in the Academy's Great Hall, a stranger approached their table. A sleek, cybernetically enhanced beast folk with the insignia of the Blood Fang Mercenary Guild emblazoned on his armor. Congratulations on your achievement, the stranger said, his tone pleasant but his eyes calculating. My guild has taken notice of your unique partnership. Blake tensed immediately. The Blood Fang Guild was notorious throughout the system. Elite mercenaries who served the highest bidder without question or moral constraint. We're not interested in joining another organization, Blake said firmly. The stranger's smile didn't reach his eyes. I don't believe I was offering choice. The guild has invested considerable resources in this academy over the years. Exceptional talents, such as yourselves, are the expected return on that investment. Regina's claws clicked softly against the table. We have made no such agreement. The Academy Council has, the stranger countered smoothly. Your training, your trials, your very partnership, all designed to produce assets for the guild. Did you think your unusual pairing was allowed by mere chance? You were an experiment, and a successful one at that. The revelation hit Blake like a physical blow. We're not property to be traded, he said, voice tight with anger. Of course not. The stranger agreed with false sincerity. You're valued recruits. You'll be given assignments worthy of your abilities, compensation beyond your imagination, and the opportunity to make history. His expression hardened. The alternative is to be hunted as deserters. The choice is yours, but I suggest you choose wisely. With that, he left them, melting back into the crowd. Did you know about this? Blake asked Regina once they were alone. No, she said, her expression troubled. But explains much. The Academy has always had connections to various mercenary guilds, but I never suspected we were being groomed for Blood Fang specifically. Blake stared into his drink, mind racing. We can't join them. Their operations violate every ethical standard in the system. Refusing means becoming fugitives, Regina pointed out. Blood Fang doesn't tolerate defiance. And you? Blake asked, meeting her gaze. What do you want? Regina was silent for a long moment. I was raised to believe that serving the Academy was the highest honor, she finally said. But these past months with you have shown me there are other paths, other values. She placed her hand over his. I will not be a weapon for those without honor, even if it means leaving everything I've known. Blake covered her hand with his free one, struck by the significance of her decision. Together, then, he said, we leave together. They made their preparations in secret over the next 2 days. Supplies were gathered, equipment checked and double-checked. Once they left Academy grounds, they would be hunted by both Blood Fang and likely the Academy itself. The night before their planned escape, Regina led Blake to a hidden alcove in the training grounds. My family has served the Academy for generations, she said, removing a stone from the wall to reveal a small cache. But not all embraced its path blindly. From the cache, she withdrew a small data crystal and a set of coordinates. My sire's final gift, she explained. Coordinates to an old freighter, abandoned in the wastes. He spoke of it as an insurance policy should the Academy ever become corrupted beyond redemption. Blake studied the coordinates. It's at least 3 days' journey across the lava fields. If it's even still there, it's our best hope, Regina said. A vessel to take us off-world, beyond Blood Fang's immediate reach. Their departure was timed with the changing of the guards, a brief window when surveillance was at its weakest. They slipped through a maintenance tunnel that led to the Academy's outer perimeter, then into the volcanic wasteland beyond. The landscape of molten Fang was even more treacherous away from the controlled environment of the Academy. Geysers of superheated steam erupted without warning, Rivers of molten rock shifted course capriciously, and indigenous predators lurked in shadowy crevices. They traveled at night when the heat was marginally less intense, navigating by the light of molten Fong's 3 moons and Regina's natural night vision. By day, they sought shelter in caves or the lee of massive obsidian formations, taking turns keeping watch. On the second day, Regina detected pursuit. Blood Fong scouts, she confirmed after studying distant movement through Blake's tactical scope. At least 6 using terrain vehicles. They're not trying to be subtle, Blake observed. They don't need to be, Regina replied grimly. On open terrain like this, they have the advantage. They altered their route, taking a more dangerous path through a region of active geothermal vents. The potential for instant death was higher, but so was the chance of losing their pursuers. As night fell on the third day, they crested a ridge and saw their destination for the first time. The freighter sat half-buried in cooled lava, its once sleek hull now pitted and scarred by years of exposure to molten Fong's harsh environment. Despite its condition, the ship was larger than Blake had expected, an older model cargo vessel designed for long-haul transport between system colonies. Think it can still fly? Blake asked as they made their cautious approach. If enough systems remain intact, Regina said. These vessels were built to withstand almost anything. They were halfway to the ship when the attack came. A sniper's shot struck the ground inches from Blake's foot, sending up a spray of obsidian shards. More shots followed, forcing them to scatter and take cover behind rock formations. Blood Fong, Regina snarled, her enhanced vision picking out figures moving among distant ridges. They circled ahead of us. Blake assessed their position quickly. We're pinned down, but they're also exposed if they want to advance. It's a standoff we can't afford, Regina countered. The ship is our only way off this planet. Blake nodded, formulating a plan. I'll draw their fire toward these southern ridges. You make for the ship, see if you can get it powered up. Regina's eyes narrowed with concern. We stay together. Trust me, Blake insisted. I'm not sacrificing myself. I'm creating a diversion. I'll join you in the ship once you've secured it. After a moment of hesitation, Regina nodded. 5 minutes. If you're not there, I'm coming back for you. Blake grinned. I count on it. When Regina was ready, Blake fired several shots from his sidearm toward the Blood Fong positions, then broke cover in a sprint toward the southern ridges. As predicted, the mercenaries focused their fire on him, allowing Regina to dash toward the freighter largely unnoticed. The next few minutes were a blur of adrenaline as Blake used every evasion tactic he'd learned over years of mercenary work. He ducked, rolled, and zigzagged between rock formations, occasionally returning fire to maintain the mercenaries' attention. When enough time had passed, he changed direction abruptly, making a direct run for the freighter. Laser fire traced his path, some shots coming close enough to singe his environment suit. Regina had managed to access the ship through a maintenance hatch. As Blake approached, she provided covering fire from within, forcing the Blood Fong mercenaries to take cover. Engine status? Blake gasped as he slid through the hatch, which Regina sealed behind him. Primary systems are offline, she reported, already moving toward the cockpit. But auxiliary power is responding. The ship was placed in standby, not abandoned completely. The freighter's interior was surprisingly intact. Emergency lighting cast a soft blue glow over corridors designed for cargo transport. They made their way to the bridge, where Regina began the complex process of awakening the dormant vessel. We need fuel, she announced after studying the diagnostics. Reserves are at 12%, enough to lift off, but not to break atmosphere or achieve orbit. Blake checked the external cameras. The mercenaries are regrouping. We got maybe 10 minutes before they mount a coordinated assault. The Academy maintains fuel depots throughout the lava fields for emergency vessels, Regina said. There should be one within 2 kilometers, according to the NAV system. Blake understood immediately. So one of us needs to reach the depot and bring back fuel cells. Regina stood. I'll go. My natural adaptations make me better suited for rapid movement in this environment. And leave me to defend the ship? Blake shook his head. We both go. Lock down the ship, set the security protocols. We move faster together anyway. The decision made, they armed themselves with the ship's emergency weapons, outdated but functional plasma rifles, and exited through a ventral hatch that kept them concealed from the ridgeline where the mercenaries had positioned themselves. Their dash to the fuel depot was a gauntlet of danger. Twice they encountered Blood Fong scouts and were forced to engage in brief, violent skirmishes. Regina's claws proved as effective as any weapon, while Blake's marksmanship neutralized threats before they could report their position. The depot, when they reached it, was a standard emergency facility, a reinforced bunker built into the side of a dormant lava tube. The door yielded to Regina's Academy access codes. "Grab as many cells as you can carry," Blake said, already loading his pack with the cylindrical power units. "We won't get a second chance at this." They had secured 8 fuel cells, enough for a system jump if they were economical, when the depot's alarm system blared to life. "They've found us," Regina growled, shouldering her pack. "We need to move. Now." The return journey was a nightmare of near misses and desperate gambles. With their presence known, the Bloodfong mercenaries had deployed sensor drones that tracked their heat signatures through the volcanic terrain. When they were within sight of the freighter, disaster struck. A precise shot from a mercenary sniper hit one of the fuel cells in Blake's pack. It didn't explode. The cells were designed with multiple fail-safes, but it began leaking corrosive fuel that ate through his environment suit and into the flesh beneath. Blake stumbled, a cry of pain escaping before he could suppress it. Regina was at his side instantly, supporting his weight. "Leave me," Blake gasped, the pain intensifying as the fuel penetrated deeper. "Take the remaining cells. Get to the ship." Regina's response was a snarl of pure defiance. In a display of strength that even Blake, accustomed to her abilities, found astonishing, she hoisted him onto her shoulder while maintaining her grip on her pack of fuel cells. "We entered this together," she growled. "We leave together." She ran, Blake's weight seemingly inconsequential to her powerful frame. Laser fire erupted around them, scorching the obsidian ground. Regina moved with preternatural agility, her path unpredictable, her determination unshakable. As they reached the freighter, the ship's defense systems activated, a surprise Blake hadn't anticipated. Apparently, Regina had remotely triggered the remaining automated turrets, providing covering fire that forced the mercenaries to retreat temporarily. Inside, Regina deposited Blake gently in the medical bay before rushing to install the fuel cells. Blake fought through the pain, using the ship's rudimentary medical supplies to neutralize the corrosive fuel and seal the wound. The injury was severe, but not life-threatening, as long as he received proper treatment soon. "Fuel cells installed," Regina reported as she returned. "Primary systems are coming online. We have power for liftoff and a single jump." "Then let's not waste it," Blake said, dragging himself to the cockpit despite Regina's protests. The freighter's engines roared to life, ancient machinery awakening with a shudder that ran through the entire hull. Outside, the Bloodfong mercenaries realized what was happening and opened fire with everything they had, but the ship's shields, old but functional, absorbed the worst of the assault. Regina took the pilot's seat, her hands moving with surprising familiarity over the controls. "My sire taught me to fly," she explained, seeing Blake's questioning look. He believed every warrior should know how to escape as well as how to fight. The ship lurched upward, breaking free from the cooled lava that had partially encased it. The engines strained, the hull creaked ominously, but the freighter continued its ascent. "They're scrambling pursuit craft," Blake warned, watching the tactical display. "2 vessels launching from beyond the ridge." "They'll be too late," Regina said confidently, pushing the engines to their limit. The freighter pierced the upper atmosphere, leaving the red hell of molten fog behind. The blackness of space enveloped them, stars emerging as the atmospheric distortion faded. "Setting course for the jump point," Regina announced. "Where to?" Blake considered their options. The major systems would be watching for them. Bloodfong had connections everywhere civilized. The fringe, he decided. The abandoned mining colonies in the Kuiper Belt. No one will look for us there, and we can make repairs before deciding our next move. Regina nodded, inputting the coordinates. Ready for jump in 10 seconds. As the jump drive powered up, Blake looked back at the viewport. Molten Fong was receding rapidly, a crimson sphere that had been both crucible and catalyst. In seeking to prove himself, he had found something unexpected, a partnership that transcended the boundaries of species and culture. The stars streaked into lines as the jump drive engaged. Their old life at Red Fong Academy, with its brutal traditions and rigid hierarchies, vanished in a blur of accelerated light. In the momentary quiet before the ship settled into jump space, Regina reached across the console and took Blake's hand. Her grip was strong, her palm rough with calluses, but there was a gentleness to her touch that communicated more than words ever could. Together, she said simply. Together, Blake agreed, feeling the weight of the gauntlets on his forearms. No longer just symbols of a cultural tradition he barely understood, but tangible reminders of a bond forged in fire and tested by betrayal. The freighter, patched and worn but stubbornly functional, carried them into the unknown. Behind them lay pursuit and danger. Ahead lay uncertainty and freedom. But in this moment, suspended between worlds, Blake knew with absolute certainty that he would face whatever came next with Regina at his side. And somehow, that made all the difference. The journey to the fringe took 3 days in jump space. The old freighter, which they discovered was named Ember's Reach according to its registry, performed admirably despite its age and condition. Blake spent much of the journey in the medical bay, allowing the ship's automated systems to properly treat his injury, while Regina familiarized herself with the vessel's capabilities. "She's better than she looks," Regina commented on the 3rd day, entering the medical bay with a ration pack. The previous owner made significant modifications to the engine and defense systems. Hidden compartments throughout the cargo hold, too. "Smuggler?" Blake asked, accepting the food gratefully. "Or someone who valued privacy," Regina replied, settling into a chair beside his bed. "Either way, it works in our favor." As they ate, Blake studied Regina thoughtfully. Away from Molten Fong, in the artificial light of the ship, her fur appeared more golden than red, and there was a relaxation to her posture that he hadn't seen before. "You seem different," he observed. Regina's ears twitched, a gesture he now recognized as contemplative rather than nervous. "I am different," she admitted. "All my life, I've lived by the Academy's code. Strength above all. Victory at any cost. Never show weakness." She glanced around the ship. "Out here, those rules seem limited. Freedom can be disorienting at first," Blake said. "Trust me, I know. When I left Earth's orbital stations, I had no idea who I was supposed to be without military protocols dictating my every move." "And now?" Regina asked. Blake smiled. "Now I'm making it up as I go, with good company." The moment was interrupted by a proximity alert. They rushed to the cockpit, where the scanner showed they were approaching the designated coordinates, an abandoned mining outpost called Callisto's Promise, one of dozens of similar facilities scattered throughout the Kuiper Belt. As they dropped out of jump space, the outpost came into view, a sprawling collection of habitation modules, extraction equipment, and docking arms, all built into and around a large, irregularly shaped asteroid. No lights shone from its windows, and no signals emanated from its communications array. "Looks deserted," Blake observed as Regina guided the ship toward docking port. "Just as we hoped." The docking procedure went smoothly, the ship's automated systems interfacing with the outpost's dormant protocols. When the airlock sealed and pressure equalized, they armed themselves before venturing into the station. Their caution proved unnecessary. Callisto's Promise was indeed abandoned, left behind when the asteroid's mineral deposits were exhausted decades earlier. Emergency power still functioned at minimal levels, providing basic life support and gravity, but nothing more. "We should be safe here for a while," Blake said as they explored the main control center. "No one comes to these old mining outposts anymore. Too far from shipping lanes, too expensive to repurpose." Regina nodded, examining the station's systems. Some equipment is still functional. We could restore partial power to certain sections, maybe even get the communications array working again, though I wouldn't recommend broadcasting our position. Over the next several days, they settled into a routine. Blake, his injury healing rapidly thanks to the medical base treatments, focused on repairing and modifying the freighter. Regina explored the station methodically, cataloging usable resources and securing their perimeter. At night, or what they designated as night, since the concept was meaningless in the perpetual darkness of the outer system. They shared meals in what had once been the station's mess hall, trading stories about their lives before the academy. Blake told Regina about growing up on Earth's crowded orbital stations, where humans lived stacked upon each other in massive habitation rings, always looking down at a planet most would never set foot on. He described his brief military career and subsequent work as a mercenary, taking jobs that led him progressively farther from Earth. In turn, Regina spoke of her childhood on Molten Fong, raised in a warrior creche where young beast folk learn combat before they learn to read. She described the rigorous trials that marked each stage of development, the pride she felt when earning her first scars, and the shock of her first partner's betrayal during a mission gone wrong. "Is that why you never took another partner?" Blake asked one evening. "Until me, I mean." Regina's gaze was distant. "Partly, but also because no one seemed worthy. The Academy teaches us that weakness is contagious, that a weak partner diminishes your own strength." Her eyes refocused on Blake. "When you defeated me that first day, using skill instead of brute force, I saw something different. Strength that complements mine rather than mirrors it." "And now?" Blake asked, echoing her earlier question. "Do you regret your choice?" Regina's answer was to remove her gauntlets, a gesture of trust among beastfolk warriors, and place them on the table between them. "These were symbols of my lineage, my heritage at the Academy. Now, they're symbols of our partnership. I regret nothing." The moment was charged with unspoken emotion, a bridge forming between their vastly different worlds. Their peaceful respite at Callisto's promise lasted 2 weeks before reality intruded. The proximity alert sounded while they were inventorying supplies in the storage bay. "Unknown vessel approaching," the ship's AI announced. "Configuration matches Blood Fong Enforcement Class." They raced to the control center, where the station's long-range scanners confirmed their worst fears. A sleek, predatory vessel was approaching the asteroid field, its trajectory suggesting a deliberate search pattern rather than casual passage. "How did they find us?" Blake wondered aloud, already calculating escape routes. Regina's expression darkened. "The Academy likely put trackers in our implants. Standard procedure for all students, ostensibly for rescue purposes." Blake cursed. "We should have thought of that. Can we remove them?" "Not without specialized equipment," Regina said. "But we might be able to mask the signal temporarily." They worked quickly, rigging a localized EMP device from the station's old communication equipment. It wouldn't permanently disable the trackers, but it could create enough interference to confuse their pursuers. "We need to move the ship," Blake decided. "Hide on the far side of the asteroid while we activate the EMP. Make them think we're still here while we slip away." Regina nodded, already heading for the docking bay. "I'll prepare the Ember's reach for silent running. You set up the EMP." They separated, each focusing on their tasks with the efficiency of partners who had learned to trust each other's capabilities implicitly. Blake configured the EMP device to activate remotely, while Regina prepped the ship for immediate departure. When everything was ready, Blake joined Regina in the cockpit. "EMP is set. Once we're in position, we trigger it, then make a run for the outer belt while they're investigating the station." The plan worked initially. They detached from the station silently, using minimal thrust to maneuver around the asteroid's bulk. From their new position, they had a clear view when the Blood Fong vessel approached Callisto's promise and deployed boarding shuttles. "Now," Blake said, activating the EMP remotely. The device functioned as intended, sending a powerful electromagnetic pulse through the station that temporarily scrambled all electronic signals, including, they hoped, their implant trackers. Regina engaged the freighter's engines, keeping power low to minimize their signature as they slipped away from the asteroid and into the deeper darkness of the belt. For an hour, it seemed they had escaped. Then, without warning, the scanner picked up pursuit. The Bloodfang vessel had abandoned the station and was now accelerating in their direction. "They're faster than we are," Regina observed grimly. "We can't outrun them in open space." Blake studied the tactical display, noting the composition of the surrounding asteroid field. "We don't have to outrun them. We just need to be more reckless." Regina understood immediately. With a feral grin that displayed her impressive canines, she adjusted their course, diving deeper into the densest part of the asteroid field. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse among the tumbling rocks. The Ember's reach, despite its age, proved remarkably nimble, with Regina's piloting skills pushing its capabilities to the limit. The Bloodfang vessel, designed for speed and combat rather than maneuverability, struggled to follow their erratic path. "They're launching fighters," Blake warned as smaller craft detached from the main vessel. "4 of them, coming in fast." "Good," Regina said with surprising confidence. "Smaller targets are easier to eliminate." She demonstrated her point by executing a daring maneuver, cutting power momentarily to drift between 2 converging asteroids, then reigniting the engines at the precise moment to slingshot away. One of the pursuing fighters, attempting to follow, misjudged the timing and was crushed between the massive rocks. The remaining fighters were more cautious, but no less determined. They split up, attempting to herd the freighter toward their larger vessel. "We need something more permanent than evasion," Blake said, wincing as laser fire from one of the fighters grazed their shields. Regina nodded toward the weapons console. "Take control of the defense systems. I'll get you clear shots." Blake slid into the gunner's seat, familiarizing himself with the freighter's weaponry, a mixture of standard pulse cannons and what appear to be custom modifications of questionable legality. "Ready when you are," he confirmed. What followed was a lethal dance through the asteroid field. Regina's flying became even more aggressive, deliberately bringing them close to pursuers before executing last-second evasions that left the fighters exposed to Blake's carefully timed shots. One by one, the fighters were eliminated, either by Blake's increasingly accurate fire or by Regina's tactical use of the asteroid field itself. By the time they engaged the last fighter, they were operating with the seamless coordination of partners who could anticipate each other's actions without communication. The final fighter pilot, recognizing the fate of his companions, attempted to retreat to the safety of the main vessel. Regina had other ideas. She pursued aggressively, allowing Blake to disable the fighter's engines with a precision shot. "That buys us time," Blake said as they veered away from the crippled fighter and the still distant main vessel. "But the mothership is still coming." Regina checked their fuel levels. "We have enough for one more jump. After that, we're running on fumes." Blake considered their options. The known systems would all be watching for them now, with Bloodfang likely having distributed their identifiers to every port and station. The Cerulean Expanse, he decided finally. The free colonies, they don't ask questions, and they're far enough from central authority that Bloodfang's influence is limited. Regina nodded, already calculating the jump coordinates. "We'll need to exit the asteroid field first. The gravitational distortion would tear us apart during jump." They navigated toward the edge of the Kuiper Belt, constantly adjusting course to maintain maximum distance from the pursuing vessel. When they finally cleared the last major gravitational disturbances, Regina initiated the jump sequence. "Jump in 10 seconds, she announced. Blake watched the rear scanner. The Bloodfang vessel was closing rapidly, preparing to fire what appeared to be a tractor beam. 5 seconds. The tractor beam activated, its energy signature reaching toward them like ghostly fingers. "Jumping now." The stars elongated around them as the jump drive engaged, tearing them away from real space just as the tractor beam brushed their aft shields. For a moment, the ship shuddered violently, systems flickering as competing forces fought for control. Then they were in jump space, the familiar blur of accelerated light surrounding them. But something was wrong. Multiple alarms blared throughout the cockpit, and the ship's AI voice spoke with uncharacteristic urgency. Jump drive compromised. Spatial coordinates destabilizing. Emergency exit from jump space recommended. Regina's hands flew over the controls. The tractor beam must have disrupted the jump field. We're losing containment. Can we drop out? Blake asked, already bracing for impact. Not safely, Regina replied grimly. But the alternative is worse. She initiated the emergency protocols, forcing the ship out of jump space prematurely. The transition was brutally jarring, like hitting a wall at full speed. Systems overloaded throughout the ship, sending cascades of sparks from control panels. Blake was thrown from his seat, impacting hard against a bulkhead. When the chaos subsided, they found themselves in unknown space. The navigational system was offline, the jump drive critically damaged, and multiple systems reporting failures throughout the vessel. Status? Blake asked, pulling himself back to his station. Regina assessed the damage reports. Life support intact. Main engines functional at 40%. Communications offline. Navigation uncertain. She looked up, meeting his eyes. We're lost, Blake. Before he could respond, the external sensors picked up a new reading, a massive object approaching from port side. They turned to the viewport and froze in astonishment. Emerging from the darkness was a vessel of impossible proportions, a city-sized ship of unfamiliar design, its surface covered in lights that pulsed with patterns suggesting intelligent communication. That's not Blood Fong, Blake stated unnecessarily. Nor any known civilization, Regina added, her voice hushed. As they watched, a smaller craft detached from the massive vessel and approached their position. Their damaged sensors could detect no weapon signatures, but neither did the approaching craft broadcast any recognizable identification or hailing signals. What do we do? Regina asked, her hand hovering over what remained of their defensive controls. Blake considered their situation. They were damaged, lost, and facing an unknown entity far beyond their capacity to fight. We wait, he decided, and hope they're friendlier than what we left behind. The smaller craft drew alongside them, matching their drift. A soft vibration ran through the Ember's reach, and the ship's systems, including several that had been damaged during their emergency exit from jump space, suddenly came back online. The communication system activated itself, and a voice spoke, not in any language they recognized, but somehow understandable nonetheless, as if the meaning were being transmitted directly to their minds rather than through conventional sound. You are injured. Your vessel is damaged. We offer assistance. Blake and Regina exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. After everything they had endured together, the Academy's trials, Blood Fong's pursuit, the dangers of space itself, this new unknown might be a threat or an opportunity. Either way, they would face it as they had faced everything else. Together, Blake activated the communication system. We accept your assistance, he said, and we thank you for it. As the smaller craft extended a docking tube toward the Ember's reach, Blake felt Regina's hand close over his. Her grip was strong, confident, grounding. Together, she said, echoing their earlier promise. Blake nodded, squeezing her hand in return. Together, whatever lay ahead, be it sanctuary or new challenge, they would meet it side by side. The human and the Beastwoman warrior, partners by choice rather than circumstance, bound by something stronger than tradition or obligation. It was, Blake reflected as the docking tube sealed against their airlock, a partnership worth every trial they had endured to forge it. And whatever this new chapter held, he wouldn't trade it for any safer path. The airlock cycled open, revealing their future.